Sartaj Aziz, advisor to Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, the same man who until a month back said that there wasn't conclusive proof against Kulbhushan Jadhav, has today said that there's political consensus on the death sentence against him. Why today? 4 days after the sentence. Sources in Pakistan say the government wasn't in the loop on the decision and now cannot be seen as taking a pro-India line. The Sharif government has no choice really but to harden its stand after India's statement yesterday. On Gravitas tonight, we explore what's next in the Jadhav case. We also bring you an exclusive interview with former Pakistan President Pervez Musharraf that exposes the deep-seated antagonism in the Pakistani military establishment against India and the power they wield on the elected representatives. I'm Palki Sharma Upadhyay. The headlines first. China says conflict over North Korea's nuclear ambitions imminent, warns that there can be no winners in war as tensions flare up between Washington and Pyongyang. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani throws his hat in the race for a second four-year term, will contest May's presidential election. Russia, Syria and Iran hold trilateral talks in Moscow, call for an unbiased and thorough investigation by the Organization for Prohibition of Chemical Warfare into the Idlib attack. French investigators ask the European Parliament to waive off far-right presidential candidate Marine Le Pen's immunity as part of the probe into her alleged misuse of parliamentary funds. First tonight, Pakistan remains adamant about conceding no ground to India on the case of Kulbhushan Jadhav. Senior Pakistani officials claimed all-party consensus on the death sentence passed on Jadhav by a military court.
Since India has no credible explanation about why their serving naval commander was in Balochistan.
You've heard of the Great Wall of China. Pakistan has put up a wall of its own on Kulbhushan Jadhav. Nothing physical, rather one designed to inflict as much frustration and pain on India as possible, regardless of international law and norms. This wall was most evident on Friday as India again tried to get consular access to Jadhav.
ये तो दे दीजिए कि चार्जशीट क्या है इनके खिलाफ, यही तो मेरी मांग है, यही तो हमारी मांग है कि ये तो बताइए कि चार्जशीट क्या है। आज तक किसी ने हमसे ये नहीं कहा है कि चार्जेस क्या है।
उनका जवाब क्या था सर?
उन्होंने कुछ जवाब नहीं दिया है।
We also condemn the baseless allegations from India, especially in the light of the fact that it was non-cooperation and lack of Indian response to Pakistan requests for legal assistance, due to which consular access has not been provided to Mr. Jadhav. May I mention in this context that India has not allowed consular access to many Pakistani prisoners for many years despite repeated requests. The whole nation is solidly united against any threat to Pakistan's security that may emerge in this context.
As diplomatic efforts continue, reports suggest India is considering a range of hard and soft options against Pakistan. While there's no word on what the hard options could be, the soft options could include restricting the issue of visas to certain categories of Pakistani nationals to begin with. Bureau Report, WION.
And joining us this evening on Gravitas, Razaul Hasan Lashkar, Associate Editor of the Hindustan Times in Delhi. He's reported for many years extensively from Pakistan. Sushant Sareen, Senior Fellow at the Vivekananda International Foundation, also joining us from the National Capital Region. And Taha Siddiqui, WION's Bureau Chief in Pakistan. Good evening to all of you. Razaul, to you first. The question we're asking on the show this evening, why now? Why has Sartaj Aziz felt the need to clarify that there is political consensus on the death sentence?
Well, you know, it's clearly they're trying to send out a picture that they're totally united on this issue. And, you know, if you look at the statement that Sartaj Aziz read out today at this briefing, it lists some of the so-called charges against Jadhav. I mean, till now, you know, everyone has been saying that no one even knows what he's been charged with. And it's very strange. I mean, if you look at it, there are about 7 charges against Jadhav, but they're very, very flimsy. I mean, they don't even refer to specific instances of attacks, except in one instance. And it's just a litany of, accusations that one could make against anyone. So I think it's just trying to send out a picture that, as you yourself said, that the civilian government is behind whatever steps the military has been taking. It's almost as if the military forced their hand, and now they have no other option but to agree with what the military is doing.
Has the military forced their hand, Taha Siddiqui?
Well, definitely when it comes to anything with regards to India, we know that the military is in control and has the policy, takes the policy decisions, and we do know that the military is very Indian-centric, and it does not do any compromise when it comes to affairs with regards to or relations with regards to India. Specifically, if we talk about Jadhav's case, we've seen how the whole process was handled by the military. Actually, the arrest initially, then the leakage of the video in which he was confessing, that was also leaked by the ISPR. Then we saw that the death sentence, the announcement of it came from the ISPR. And in a way, we felt, reporting on this issue, we felt that the civilians were not even talking about it or forthcoming. But because of the fact that after this death sentence, now there has been a lot of pressure on the civilian side, from what I'm gathering in Pakistan, that the civilian side has to come forward and own this case, and because of which we saw this particular sort of press conference today, which was very one-sided. It was not an interactive press conference at all. I was attending the press conference. Sartaj Aziz came in, gave out a statement, and then just walked away like as if he was given this dictation as to what he had to say and no more than that.
Very interesting that you use the term dictation, and no prizes for guessing who could be dictating this. Sushant Sareen, what does political consensus mean in Pakistani context anyway? Was this then a message more for their own military bosses than for India?
No, I think I don't think the civilian government was in any case in any position to defy the military, or even it would be an extremely heroic assumption to think that the civilian government was even interested in playing fair with somebody like Jadhav. So I think there is, I don't believe that there is any major divide on that. And in any case, for an alleged Indian spy, there is no question of the civilian government trying to, take on the all-powerful military. And that also at a time when, there is the impending judgment of the Panama Papers case. You already have a kind of a very ambiguously worded statement coming from the ISPR on what they expect out of the judgment. And then, of course, you are going into an election year. So I don't think that the civilians are going to tempt fate by trying to say that, look, we want to have good relations with India, so don't mess with India and don't make us push us down a slope from where we can't retrieve the situation. So clearly that is where matters stand as of now. The question is, how do we go forward from here? What Sartaj Aziz said is neither here nor there. If tomorrow he's given a dictation which says something completely opposite, they'll put that spin on it, and if there is some kind of a swap deal in the offing, then you will probably go ahead and do it. Of course, the civilians will be made to carry the can. But that's where matters stand right now, and really no surprises. The only important thing to my mind is that the Pakistani side has been constantly upping the ante, as though they are trying to convey a message that, look, okay, even if you might have an ISI guy in your custody, don't expect there to be any kind of a deal as far as Jadhav is concerned. Now, if indeed that is the case, and this is not just a negotiating position, then probably it means curtains for both of them. But if this is merely a negotiating stand, then perhaps, after a fair bit of time, when tempers have cooled down, this thing has been pushed into the background, the elections are over, you might come across a situation where some kind of a deal is struck.
Razaul Lashkar, how do you read the situation? Is this a new negotiating tactic? Because even as we discuss these statements, we can tell you that 3 more Indians were arrested from Pakistan-occupied Kashmir on charges of spying for the RNAW only today. So Pakistan certainly is raising the stakes, but the question is, do they want to talk, or are they telling India that there is going to be no compromise, no dealing?
You know, I mean, if you look at it on the face of it, Sartaj Aziz's statement seems to have upped the ante. But, you know, if you read between the lines, there's a very interesting, section in that statement where he talks about the measures that are now available to Jadhav. And he says that he can go to the appellate court and, file a petition there, an appeal. If that is rejected in 40 days, he can go to the army chief, which is for about another 60 days. And then even if the army chief rejects it, he can go to the Pakistan president. And I think there's a period of about 90 days. So if you just do a small ballpark calculation, they seem to have given themselves something like 6 months. I have been saying this right from the beginning. I think this is, just another tactic to put the pressure on India, try to force India's hand. But I think at the end of it, they are going to try and, work out some sort of a deal for a swap, as Mr. Sareen pointed out, or some other sort of accommodation. Because, I don't think, even they would be so foolhardy as to take these things to a stage where, the relations are, irretrievably damaged.
Taha, what do we know about these 3 Indians who've been arrested only today? And should this be seen as a deliberate provocation by the Pakistani side at a time when relations are already fraught?
Well, it was definitely interesting because the timing of these arrests, or whether or not they were arrested today, we do not know, because this was the information came out from the police that they raided a place in Rawalakot in Kashmir, Pakistan-administered Kashmir, and where they caught these 3 people who had infiltrated from the other side. But the timing of it is quite interesting because this news came at the same time when the Indian High Commissioner was on his way to meet with the Foreign Secretary and to discuss Jadhav's case, and to discuss the fact that that India has not gotten any consular access to him, and the fact that the charge sheet, as we saw in the interview that he gave outside the Foreign Office building also. So these 3 arrests, they surfaced at the same time when the Indian High Commissioner was on his way to meet the Foreign Secretary. So in that way, the timing is definitely interesting, and it's sort of putting the Indian High Commissioner or the Indian government on a back foot to say again, to repeat the same narrative that we keep hearing from Pakistan, that there is involvement of RAW in Pakistan, and RAW is carrying out many activities, which we keep hearing this narrative from different policymakers in Pakistan, specifically the military, and now even the civilians, which follow sort of suit.
So, Sareen, there's another theory. If you look at the developments in Pakistan, within Pakistan, since the beginning of this year, there was, of course, the house arrest for Hafiz Saeed. There was the Hindu Marriage Act, which was passed. There was much in the headlines, the Pakistani Prime Minister going and celebrating Holi, and also talking about going after terror camps. So many believe that this is an attempt by the army to erode his credibility, to erode his authority, and put him in his place. And so this has become a game of who blinks first vis-a-vis India and Pakistan. And the civilian government is just watching from the sidelines.
See, frankly, I don't give any credence to all the measures which Nawaz Sharif is supposed to have taken. That was just an eyewash. They're not serious about it. And the fact that they're not serious about it and that, this kind of a thing is just a sham is very evident from the way, the Hindu community is being treated in Sindh, even as we speak, and also from what has happened yesterday in the university in Mardan. So, frankly, I wouldn't take any of what Nawaz Sharif does seriously. It makes for good press. It allows the Pakistanis to try and tell the rest of the world that, we're turning over a new leaf and stuff like that. My problem, however, is, you speak about these 3 arrests. We don't know who these guys are, whether they are Indians or not, because there have been innumerable times in the past where some 2 guys have been arrested in Karachi who were supposed to be workers of the MQM, and then suddenly, you slapped on the label that these were RAW agents. Nobody had ever heard of them. Nobody ever, their families didn't know anything about them. Suddenly they were picked up. A few weeks later, the guys were, simply released because there was nothing on them. So these kind of tricks have been going around for a fair bit of time. Just 2 days back, the Karachi police claimed that they had arrested 5 Al-Qaeda in the in the Indian subcontinent terrorists who they said were being funded by the RAW and by the NDS. So they're going to ridiculous extremes and they're only making a laughing stock of themselves. Again, my problem is that the way, there is increasingly a commitment trap on both sides, which I don't see how they will find it easy to back down on, because from the Indian side, we have made this a major issue and it's very public, and for the government to not now be able to get Kulbhushan Jadhav back is going to be a major setback. Similarly, on the Pakistani side, they've also climbed up a gum tree from which they will find it difficult to climb down. Now, the question is, how do the two sides reconcile this position, if at all there is some kind of a deal in the offing? And if there is no deal in the offing, then while the two people who are in the custody of both countries might suffer very, very grievous harm, but the relationship between the two countries is going to go down a very, very slippery slope, whereby, in the future, the red lines which had always been respected in the past are being breached, which means that anybody who's traveling to either country or even to a third country can very easily be kidnapped and then shown to be a saboteur or a spy or something like that, without any recourse to any kind of legal assistance or any kind of due process. So I think this is a very, very slippery slope for the two countries to go down, and it's best that they pull back, not stand on prestige issue, and strike whatever deal they can and put this incident past them.
Right. I'm going to request you all to stay with us. 10 days back, well before this Jadhav sentence was handed out, I interviewed former Pakistani President and retired Army Chief Pervez Musharraf in Dubai. He confirmed what we've been saying on the show all along, that there's a strong anti-India agenda in Pakistan, and military grandstanding on a case like Kulbhushan Jadhav's not only feeds that narrative, but undercuts the authority of the civilian government that tries to make overtures of peace. Listen in to what Pervez Musharraf had to say.
Anyone who is anti-Pakistan will be crushed, certainly.
Is that the Indian government extended a hand and it was struck back. And so when we talk about resolving a situation, it has to come from both sides.
There is no extending of hand. This was all cosmetics. On one side, you are extending a hand like that, these cosmetics of invitations and going to for a birthday, wishing a happy birthday to the Prime Minister and all that. These are cosmetics. And what happens after that? You go back to your country and abuse Pakistan, and you're talking with threatening voices, what is happening on the line of control, what is happening inside Balochistan, how you are assisting Brahm Dag, all these are actions against Pakistan.
Why are you anti-Modi, let me ask you? I've never seen you say anything positive about the Indian Prime Minister. He has an amazing mandate.
Well, let me say something positive. He's doing well for India. Yeah. But he's not doing well for the region. He's not doing well for Pakistan. He's not doing well for the Muslims. So I mean, I'm being realistic. Modi he's extremely offensive. His statements, and not only statements, look at statements of the government, their plans, their actions which substantiate whatever they talk against. I mean, they are totally against Pakistan.
No, you
said
their words and examples and actions.
They are talking of destabilizing Pakistan. They are talking of non-military solution to Pakistan. They are talking of Lord, we are reading articles. We are even watching your television, where even a general has sat down and spoken about it. your think tanks writing articles.
The general statement, I think, is, and I think a lot of it could be hearsay, because if you can tell me which leader when said that we are going to destabilize Pakistan, I'll take it. But when a general after an Uri attack says that we will reply at a time and place of our choosing, that is only to be expected. As a former general, would you have dealt with it differently?
No, I would have certainly resolved. I was trying to resolve the dispute, the core issue, the dispute. Resolve the dispute, Uri and all will go off, obviously. If you don't, Uri will keep happening. I mean, this will keep happening because there are people within Kashmir, your part of Kashmir, who are rising. The youth have risen. The whole youth has risen now in support of the killing of Burhan Wani and the 90 people.
Our UPSC toppers, the young from Kashmir, are winning medals. We saw the story of India.
You talk a lot about cosmetics.
This is not cosmetic, it's the future of the whole generation. They want to
Look
study,
at the
they want to go to
people.
school.
The people of Kashmir have risen against India. They don't want to be part of India. There is no doubt about that. If you I will never get convinced, whatever you say. Now, comparing that with Balochistan, and I don't know what we are talking. Balochistan, there is nothing happening in Balochistan. It is a few people who are being encouraged again, the raw intrusion, and that is what is happening. And you are the ones who propagate them all over. This Brahm Dag is a great man. Baloch, you get these Baloch separatists who are there around, sprinkled around in London. When I used to visit them, they used to shout around whenever I came. A few people, maybe a dozen or 2 dozen standing, and so also in the United States. You encourage them to you use your influence in the Congress and ask a congressman to speak about human rights violations in Balochistan. Who does that? India, through your clout with the congressmen in the United States. I know all this.
If it's all lies, why should Pakistan be bothered?
Sorry?
If it's all lies, why should Pakistan be bothered?
We are not bothered. We have to deal with it, because you then go ahead and you are training our terrorists, you are arming them, you are financing them and pumping them into Balochistan. That is where we get bothered.
So you said that the Indian Prime Minister isn't doing enough for the region. What would you like him to do? What more?
Peace in the region, which really involves resolution of Indo-Pakistan dispute.
But he can't do it single-handedly. It has the other
No, he doesn't want to do it. The other hand, it is his hand. The other hand is forward. The major player of the region, the big force, the Bada Bhai, is India.
Okay.
It is the Bada which has to be accommodating, which has to be, which has to show magnanimity.
Right.
When the small one does it, all the negative connotations are given to it. India must understand this. Don't be a big country with a small heart. Well, India must realize that you stop our waters. It's a very serious issue. It's an extremely serious issue.
Pakistan was very jittery. We did not have talks for 2 years until earlier this month or last month.
I mean, how can you stop Pakistan's waters?
When you say India is not large-hearted, I'm saying that India doesn't touch things which it believes as
Matlab, you are going to open a new issue. That is large-heartedness.
No, I'm giving you an example, sir.
India has to be
There's a lot of
accommodating.
pressure.
Accommodation has to come from the larger. That is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
It cannot come from the smaller.
And I'm telling you that India is being accommodating because there is
No,
pressure
India
domestically
wants
that we
to
should
suppress.
revisit the treaty.
India.
So that was Parvez Musharraf. We'll play the full interview for you very soon on WION. But this is the portion that we wanted to play out tonight on what he says about Balochistan, what he says about India-Pakistan relations. If I could come to you with this Raza Lashkar, he goes on repeatedly through this. This was a 55-minute interview. He keeps on saying, we will not talk about specifics because we want to resolve the core issues, he says. And he says Uri will keep happening. Is Parvez Musharraf really voicing the philosophy of the Pakistani military, and the result of which we're seeing in a case like that of Kulbhushan Jadhav?
There's absolutely no doubt that he's just towing the standard Pakistani military line. I mean, you've had the last two army chiefs, and even somebody like Musharraf saying repeatedly, Kashmir is, the jugular vein of Pakistan. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that the military leaders keep spewing out. And, on the one hand, they keep pressuring India to talk Kashmir. And at the same time, they keep, dangling this thing over India, saying that, look, if you don't resolve Kashmir, you're still going to have terrorism. But the fact of the matter is, most of these people who are involved in terrorist attacks, like the one in Uri, are guys who are trained in Pakistan, who are allowed, to operate without any fetters by the Pakistani military. And, there's this clear divide where they talk about good Taliban and bad Taliban. I mean, anyone who carries out an attack within Pakistan is a bad militant. Anyone who carries out an attack outside Pakistan is a good militant. So I mean, till they stop this sort of policy of cracking down on some militant groups and not taking action against groups like the Lashkar-e-Taiba and the Jaish-e-Mohammed, I mean, you're going to hear people like Musharraf go on talking this kind of rubbish.
Sushant Sareen, I know you do not want to give much credence to what Nawaz Sharif says. You're saying he's playing to the galleries. But throughout this interview, Pervez Musharraf also kept criticizing any overtures, any initial warmth that Modi and Sharif might have shared, saying it was all cosmetic. Is that the message his army has also sent to Nawaz Sharif now, that do not try to be too friendly, you have no real power?
Well, honestly, I think Musharraf is even a bigger waste of time than Nawaz Sharif. But having said that, see, the point is that, it's the same guy. And this is the problem with most of the generals. As long as they are manning the army, they take certain positions and certain postures which they think or which they are sure espouses the institutional point of view. The day they take over the reins of power in government, then they realize what are the limitations of that power. And they realize that, you need to be reasonable, you need to start talking, you need to start doing things on your side so that the situation becomes conducive to some kind of a dialogue process. In Musharraf's case, he played a double game, just like he played one with the Americans, he played one with us as well. So while on the face of it, it was all hunky-dory in those 3 or 4 years, behind the scenes we know that some very major terrorist attacks were taking place in India. Now the other thing is, and this is a big problem every time you talk to a Pakistani, this nonsense about India is the big country, big brother, you must have a big heart. So the Pakistanis need to reconcile this dichotomy in their minds, because at one level they say that India is the big country and needs to make the concessions and needs to show a big heart and all of that. At another level they also want parity. Now you can't have both things. So either you say India is the big guy, India has to make certain concessions and we are willing to live like the younger brother, or you say I want parity, in which case you can't ask for concessions and magnanimity and what have you. So I think I really wish the Pakistanis would reconcile this dichotomy once and for all, so that we know where exactly we stand with them. And regardless of who you talk to, whichever political leader or military leader you talk to, this is the normal drivel which you hear all the time. So and everything else which Musharraf has said is literally what he used to say when he was the army chief before he became the dictator. So nothing new out there, no great revelations, and the mindset pretty much, is a very fixed kind of a mindset which we are very familiar with.
Taha Siddiqui, let me ask you this question as well. Is Jadhav a victim more of Pakistan's internal power games?
Well, definitely the way the whole case is played out, and the sort of deflection that we're seeing, and kind of this blame game that everything that is happening in Balochistan is to do with what India is doing there. This narrative that we've been hearing constantly, and now they have they put a face on it by alleging that this person was behind it. So there has been, I mean, we do know that if we look at Balochistan, and I've reported from there, and we've run some reports on WION also, we've seen that the Balochistan insurgency is far greater and a more complex problem than just some foreign agencies' involvement. But Pakistan has been constantly creating this threat factor, and the military needs this for its relevance in the country, for its relevance of sort of political domination in the country, and because of which we see the military continues to play out anything to do with India, exaggerate that, and use that to build this narrative that we are under threat from this country next door.
Right. So whatever be the backstory of this, the fact is that there is no forward movement on the case of Kulbhushan Jadhav. In fact, there's only a hardening of positions. Will both the sides be able to take a step down and resolve this? Doesn't look very likely given where we stand right now, but we never know how things go forward. Rizaul Lashkar, Sushant Sareen, Taha Siddiqui, thanks very much for joining us here on Gravitas tonight. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about the mother of all bombs.